All right, it looks like we are live, streaming on Facebook now. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Peace be upon you all. We're welcoming you to a conversation on Hajj, women, and race. My name is Hasna Maznavi, and I'm the founder and president of the Women's Mosque of America. In case you haven't heard of us, we are the first women-led Muslim house of worship in the US. And we currently, because of quarantine, we're currently doing online events, but we usually have women-led jummahs for women and children in LA once a month. And today we have a few special guests with us. So the first one is Hajjah Krishna Nunnally Najieb, and she is the one who we just released her khutbah video on the transformative power of Hajj. And usually during our in-person events and Jummahs, we will have a Q&A discussion with the Imam after each Jummah is over. So what we're doing today is we release the video, which you can watch on YouTube or on our Facebook page, and we're doing a live discussion with her. So please, if you have any questions or reflections you want to share, please type them in the comment section below on Facebook, and then we'll inshallah answer them. And then we have Zaria Horton, who is on the board of the Hajjah Project, and she also has given a khutbah at the Women's Mosque of America, and we encourage you to check that out. It was on being single, a single Muslimah, and I have to say congratulations, because she just got married, mashallah. So we're stealing her away on her honeymoon time to come in and do a Q&A with us. So we're very grateful for that. Then we have Sister Shahida Sharif of Hajj Pros. She and her husband lead Hajj tours and Umrah tours, and actually that is who Sister Krishna traveled with. So she's going to be giving us the lowdown today on Hajj 2020, what's going on, what to expect, and also what it's like to travel as a single Muslim woman on Hajj, and yes, it's possible. And then we have Sister Noor Abbas, who was the winner of the first backpack that the Hajjah Project awarded. And so she's going to talk to us about how that experience impacted her and how it went on her Hajj, which she also already performed. And then finally, we have Samia Bano, who's our Director of Operations at the Women's Mosque of America. And she's going to be taking the questions from you guys on Facebook Live if you have any. And she also is going to be sharing her experience in attending all 8 days of the Muslimah prayer and action, which the Hajjah Project recently did in response to the Black Lives Matter movement and the recent tragedies surrounding George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and many others. So thank you everyone for joining. We're really happy to have you today. And Sister Krishna, if you could start us off and just tell us your experience. You gave an amazing, incredible khutbah on Hajj, the transformative power of Hajj. And I remember that day, the thing that really struck us all was your fresh take on Hajj. Usually when Muslims talk about Hajj, they talk about it as this thing that you do only at the end of your life, and you were presenting it as this dynamic tool of transformation to transform your life, even if you're a young person. So could you tell us a little bit about what led you to create the Hajjah Project, and also what are your goals and objectives for it?
Thank you so much for having us today. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So the Hajjah Project was created, I started creating it and finding people to help me with it about 2 years after I completed my Hajj in 2015. My husband and Jamal and I were blessed to be invited by Allah to make the Hajj. I think of myself as probably the most unlikely Hajjah because I was a new revert person in the deen. I converted to Islam after many years being a seeker, being United Methodist, being with the Church of Religious Science and trying various metaphysical things. I was truly a seeker and going back to the Methodist Church, but I was looking for something for most of my adult life. Little did I know that I had been bumping into it, off and on. So when I married my husband in 2009, about a week later, I actually made my Shahada um, to commit to Islam because I was curious. And I have a close cousin who's a pastor, and she said, well, what if you don't like it? And I was like, well, I'll just unconvert. If I'm converted before, I'll unconvert. But anyway, just to give you a little bit of that background. So 6 years later, I find myself getting ready to make this Hajj journey. I am not an Islamic scholar. I was still very much a fumbling Muslimah to myself. I felt very unsure in my deen. But, alhamdulillah, the experience was so transformative and so solidified what I had been seeking. And I found that moment where I had my true one-on-one experience with Allah. And I felt in that moment that I had been given a great gift and that I wanted to give back as the recipient of that gift. So, coming back to the States and, going through your normal practices and your routine and everything, I kept contemplating and asking Allah, what could I do? How could I, give back, or what should I do with this? So, they say when you come back from Hajj, you have the Hajj glow, because you do truly feel uplifted, positive. And so kind of one day after making dua prayer, it came to me, this idea. And I actually literally was going around, I went to a couple of events and I'm, asking imams, what do you think about this? And asking sisters, what do you think about this? So fast forward, we convened the Hajjah Project. It's a collaborative woman-run organization. We're a nonprofit. And in 2018, we were able to give our first sort of Hajj gift to a Muslimah who's making an intention to go to Hajj for the very first time. So we actually gave a cash gift in a backpack to another Muslimah that we hope that you all will meet with us on another occasion. But the very first backpack went to Sister Nur Abbas. And truly, it was quite a blessing for us, because we were running around trying to find someone in LA, trying to get the word out through the grapevine and the internet and emails, looking for sisters who were making Hajj for the first time. And one of our board members, Sharon Muhammad, and another sister, Munira, were having lunch. And I think Munira said to Sharon, oh, that sister over there, Noor, we know her. She's going to Hajj. Maybe she should have a gift. And so, I think Noor and I exchanged emails, and we had a phone call the day before we were having an event to give the gift. And, mashallah, it was a great thing. And we were so blessed to be able to give Noor the backpack. So I'd like to introduce Nur Abbas, who kind of exemplifies one type of Hajjah experience, someone who intentionally decides to make Hajj younger in their life with her husband before they make babies, as a way to kind of just get that in there, as opposed to, waiting till later in life. So Nur, please speak to us.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much. That was such a nice introduction. Yeah, that's literally exactly how it happened. I was at the masjid. I was at Islah LA in Los Angeles, and I had mentioned that I was going to attend a Hajj this year, inshallah, to Sister Munira. Sister Munira was like, oh, do you know Krishna? There's the Hajjah Project. I'd never heard of it. And then I got in contact with Krishna, and literally, I think it was the day before or the night before, she was like, oh, just fill out this application and inshallah come tomorrow to the presentation. And that's how it went. And it was honestly the biggest blessing ever. Hajj, like I'd done a lot to prepare for Hajj. I'd read books, I'd attended some seminars and other presentations, and they all were like men-led. And men were the ones teaching me about Hajj. Men were the ones like telling me about their experiences, which is obviously very helpful. They're very knowledgeable. I'm sorry, my cat keeps coming in the way.
You never have to apologize for cats.
Knows that I'm talking and on the computer. It's probably to get on this. But yeah, so I think that then seeing this women-led organization, the Hajjah Project, and hearing from other women about their experiences was honestly the biggest gift that I could have asked for. And at the presentation, I remember being so grateful about this backpack that had I had a bunch of supplies in it, and I used them all. I used them all at Hajj. But I think the biggest thing that I benefited from and that I appreciated was after the presentation, just being around all of the women, some of who had attended Hajj and others who just like had heard other experiences, and hearing from them and getting their advice was so important to me. And I felt that now I truly can understand and felt more prepared for Hajj because I'd heard it from a woman's perspective, and I'd heard things about being patient and about how you feel loved at Hajj, and just about how to stay clean at Hajj, and all these things are really important, but you don't necessarily hear when you go to a talk led by a man. And so the backpack I used every single day, and it came with this hydration pack in it, which I think was the most useful part about the backpack. Is I would just every morning I would go and fill that with Zamzam, and then that would last me for the next few hours, and I would just go and refill it. And it was so convenient because I'd be doing tawaf, I'd be walking around doing whatever, and I could just take out the little straw. It's one of those camelback backpacks, and so I could just take out the straw and like drink the Zamzam. It was so nice. And every time I would drink the water, I would also think that, wow, they're like, this came from the Hajj Project, and these women that now, it acted as a really nice comfort that I was here at Hajj making dua for them, and I knew that they were there back in LA or wherever making dua for me. And so it was just, I think that bond of sisterhood was what really made me appreciate the Hajjah Project.
That's so beautiful. And I know that the Hajjah Project is not just limited to supporting women going to Hajj only. It is a greater community, especially online these days. And there are a lot of projects that you guys have been doing. So Zaria, if you could talk to us about the 8 days of Muslimah prayer in action, and what that was, how it came about, and what your plans for it were, or objectives, and then afterwards we'll hear from Samia, who actually attended all 8 days, and we'll hear a little bit from the viewer's perspective of how it was.
Thank you again for the invite here today. And wow, just listening to Noor's story just kind of made me, feel like the Noor, basically like her name, the light inside me. It's wonderful to be kind of full circle and see that process sitting on the board. I also wanted to add that the Hajjah Project is a mix of women who have been on Hajj, as well as women who are, inshallah, planning on going on Hajj. And this is kind of part of the importance of the Hajjah Project, in the sense of we're an organization that strives to help women fulfill the 5th pillar, but also assist them in women projects, things that support women, that support Muslimas. And out of this, I should also backtrack and say the 8 days of prayer and action, Muslimah prayer and action, came out of the fact of basically striving to find, continuing kind of with we had just completed Ramadan at home, safe at home. And I think that was a new experience for all of us, obviously. And on top of that, Eid, which was May 24th, George Floyd was murdered on May 25th. So basically you go through this elation, this moment of, we've experienced something very unique, very powerful, Ramadan at home. And then literally after having celebration regarding that, a man is murdered. And then literally, so basically George Floyd dies in 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Breonna Taylor is murdered by 8 bullets. So basically just countless lives, and the powerful number 8, and what does that symbolize? And so then we came together and saying, how do we express ourselves? How do we share, besides prayer, how do we interact? Because one of the things we found about participating at Safe at Home as the Hajjah Project, and we did have a weekly halakas to kind of just touch base. And one of the things is connection and connecting. And because we all are safe at home, how do we connect? We know that there are people possibly outside protesting. We know that there are people writing petitions, they're doing Instagram, but also how do we express ourselves and possibly connect with other people? And so, you know, coming off of Ramadan safe at home, we created these 8 days of Muslimah prayer and action, where we could support each other, but also feel like we are consciously doing something in action, praying as Muslimas, we know how important that is, but also providing information, resources, and solution, because that's also important. You don't want to feel stuck, like you can't do anything, you're safe at home, what can you do? Well, there's a lot you can do. And so in that time, let me just share with you. So our first day, and these 8, each day had a theme. And I'll just kind of read quickly just the titles of these themes so you all can get an understanding of where that came from.
And Zaria, let me interrupt you really quick, just for the viewers. You're also a licensed therapist as well, so I think that is significant, because you're also tending to the psychological reality that people are going through. And so I think it's important to also talk about your perspective as a therapist, and how that you know, that perspective has gone into planning these steps as well.
Okay, so in one of the days I actually did co-facilitate with one of my co-trainers who I train with on a regular basis. So the first day was actually purpose, and kind of just where do we come, you know, talking about pilgrimage, but also reflecting on pilgrimage in an alternative way, a spiritual journey, because honestly, we are all going through a spiritual journey because we are in the spiritual journey of unknown. We do not know what the future holds. We never do, only God knows that. But on top of that, just dealing it safe at home, we don't know how long we will be safe at home. So the first day was kind of a discussion regarding the purpose and setting the agenda of safe at home, and how we can find purpose in being safe at home, what action we can take. The next was looking at Muslimas in history and looking at role models of Muslimas to provide strength, particular focus on the wives of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Next was the environment and the importance of the environment and social justice. You know, there's something called Green Dean. There's a book out there called Green Dean, and just our connection as human beings, you know, Muslim or not Muslim, but just our connection to our earth and to our world, and how we each impact each other. So we had a conversation on that on the third day. The fourth day was emotional wellness, and that was the day that I co-presented with my training partner, Camila Wilkerson, regarding coping with trauma, because we all are experiencing some type of trauma, and just not being able to get out and experience life how we have generally experienced it. On top of that, just having what's been happening, seeing the injustice that is occurring in our world, has really kind of shine some light on injustices that are happening. And so how do we cope with that? And I think particularly people of color, and again, I'll speak for myself in stating what I have seen and what I've experienced, that this time, and I think this is why the 8 days of Muslimah in action was so important, there's something about this time that's different than other times. We are very aware that people are experiencing injustice on a daily basis, but this time seems different. This time seems, you know, inshallah, that people have gotten it, and they're like, you're not just complaining to complain. It's really unfair out there. There's really things happening that are seriously unfair and can't be just explained away with, well, there had to have been a reason for that. No, there's not a reason for what is happening right now, except racism and injustice. So again, so just kind of coping with that. Also, how we have compartmentalized, and I say we meaning being Black and female, and compartmentalizing is how we many times have to focus in the world. We have to compartmentalize saying, because if we worry about and think about all the injustice, it can be overwhelming and we can't get through our day. So just kind of providing support to that. The next day was actually about community resources and a conversation on public health, because in this COVID-19 crisis, who is being affected? Many times Black and brown people, and we're seeing racial and class issues taking place regarding that, as well as we're also seeing seniors being affected. But now we've got a new strain that's pretty much affecting everybody and anybody. So we just need to be aware of that, but particularly just looking at the public health crisis that we are experiencing and being mindful of that, and what are resources available if something were to happen. So we talked about that. And that would be emotional as well as physical resources. And then our next piece was, day 6 was financial wellness and empowerment. Get your money right. That also speaks to how we talk about Hajj. One of the benefits and blessings of the Hajjah Project is to also plant the seed to say, you don't have to wait, as we saw Sister Noor, you don't have to wait until possibly you're older and a senior citizen before you go on Hajj. But how do you plant the seed to kind of financial wellness to maybe start putting money away for special things in your life? One of those special things being the 5th pillar. So we talked about financial wellness. The 7th day was listening to our youth. How can we, what do they need from us and how can we support them? And lastly, our 8th day was really focusing on emphasizing, we did talk about action. How can we be active? How can we also move forward? What do we do with all this information that we've learned over these 8 days? And how do we move forward with that information? How can we actually implement and put it into practice? Also at that discussion, we received an update regarding the Black Lives Matter movement and just kind of reflecting on what's happening regarding social justice and particularly looking at race issues regarding that. So that's kind of was our summary. We started also systematically on June 8th. Again, just keeping that magic of the importance of the number 8. So we did it June 8th through June 15th. And one of the things that I also want to talk, just kind of reflect upon, when focusing on wellness is the importance of self-care. One of the topics that I also talked about during Ramadan when we were talking safe and home is just connecting with people and making sure you're not isolated and alone. And even though you may not be able to physically hug and hold people, just checking on people, just keeping them in, saying, hey, how are you doing? Possibly doing a FaceTime, a face chat, just ways that we can connect with each other are so, so important, particularly during, it's always important, but particularly during these times. And also, how do we cope with these feelings? Find people that you can talk to, that you can express yourself and that honestly, they will listen to you and provide support. The other powerful thing about the 8 days is that it was a safe space. It was a safe space to pray. It was a safe place to meditate, possibly shed tears, grieve some loss, as well as get rejuvenated and resources so that you can move forward, because it also can be hindering as a human being to feel like I'm stuck and there's no, this is bad and there's nothing else I can do about it. So we want to say, yes, let's honor the feeling of loss. Let's honor the feeling of grief, but let's also honor the fact that we as women can come together and bond with each other and support each other. Lastly, I also say about the Hajjah Project is just kind of what also led to this is in Surah 22 Al-Hajj, there's something about like in the service of your Lord and in, striving for the will of Allah. And so, we in the Hajjah Project are kind of striving striving to be the best we can be with the cards, with the things that we have been dealt. So how can we be the best that we can be in these unusual circumstances that we are currently living in? And, you know, just remembering pilgrimage can take place in many types of ways. You know, sacred journey, you can have a sacred journey even at home, and just kind of, you know, thinking outside of the box when we look at, you know, look at pilgrimage. And so that's what the Hajjah Project is doing, is yes, completing the fifth pillar in the sense of long-term journey of actually completing that, but also the sacred journey of how you can be as a woman, as a Muslimah, as far as empowering yourself, your community, your family, and those, you know, your environment. And with that, I think I will close and pass it on to Samia, who can, you know, share with, you know, what was her experience, because I could talk all about it for a long period of time, but what was her experience as kind of listening to it, you know, what she got out of it.
Should I go ahead, Hasna?
Yeah, go for it.
Cool. Yeah, no, you know, Sister Krishna had texted me that they were doing these 8 days, and I was so grateful that she did, because I'm not always on Facebook and stuff, so I might have missed the announcement. And I was so grateful because it was just such an amazing experience to be part of all of those 8 days. Every day I learned something new. Every day I was like, you know, just I felt that sense of community and that sense of, like, you know, our being there to support each other. It was really wonderful. And like just so many eye-opening moments, like Sister Zaria, when you were doing your presentation with Sister Camila. I remember, I don't remember if it was you or Sister Camila who talked about how even when people like who are allies are sharing graphic pictures or videos of you know, things that are happening in the Black community, it can be triggering for you, because you know, that like is an ongoing trauma that the Black community is facing. And to have more people sharing about and talking about it, listening about it, seeing it even more, can actually also be triggering. And I had not thought about it like that before. So, you know, my awareness was being raised in how I can, you know, need to be a little bit more careful and not just assume that my Black friends just want to talk about what's going on. It's better that I check in with them, you know, and just little big things like that. And then we had this another like really amazing session that, like you mentioned, on climate justice. And I mean, for me, that was one of the sessions that helped me to see like the bigger picture perspective of, like, when we talk about Black Lives Matter, that it's not enough to just focus on the very narrow issue of police violence, you know, that there's so much more to what's actually affecting Black lives and you know, comprising and contributing to the violence that they're having to suffer. And you know, one of the examples that the speaker that day, Sister Carey, was giving was about how in like for people who are active in the context of environmental justice and so forth, and I like to think of myself as someone who is more environmentally aware than the average person and tries to do my best to live an environmentally conscious life. But even like I'm not up to date on all the issues. And I was like particularly struck by an example that she gave of how when we are not aware of the extended consequences of our actions and so forth, we can really create harm without meaning to when we think we're doing something good. Like she was mentioning the example of how all these sacrifice zones have been created where for the theoretical benefit of some people, other people's lives and well-being is sacrificed. So she gave one of the examples she gave was like planting trees. You know, there's like this whole system that we have created to offset our carbon use. And one of the ways that we do that is by planting trees. Now, it turns out there are a whole bunch of corporations that have taken on contracts to plant trees on behalf of other organizations and so forth that have made commitments to plant trees. And you think, oh my gosh, planting trees is such a wonderful thing. Let me contribute more to this cause. But the problem is that a lot of these corporations that have taken on these contracts to plant trees, they're going off to like third world countries, like in South America and so forth, and they're taking over land over there and planting trees. Yes, but they're planting trees without being careful about, you know, like how planting trees in that area is impacting that environment and that community, because so often they'll just plant trees that are not native to that environment, and you know, and end up creating harm to that local environment. And like, again, it was just like one of those things that like really struck with me and opened my eyes to like these unintended consequences that our actions can have when we don't have proper education and awareness.
Thank you, Samia. Yeah, you know, that I was saying this earlier before we started, but a lot of times environmentalism can or has previously been seen as a white people's issue, but the truth is that it really affects everyone across the globe. And what you were saying about the sacrifice zones, it really also shows the importance of doing things holistically. And so I think, you know, as Muslims, we are supposed to live with both feet, one foot in the dunya and one in the akhirah, one, you know, in this material world and the reality here, and then also with one foot towards where we're going in the afterlife. And that means, you know, not just taking care of our spirits, but also taking care of our bodies and the environment and everything through this lens of serving God in humility and out of love and compassion for our fellow humans. So yeah, I think that is just such a wonderful thing that you guys did with the Hajjah Project. And I think it's beautiful, Krishna, how this thing that you experience has now blossomed into so many other different avenues.
Yeah, and you know, I'd like to point out one other thing, because of course we believe in intention, and everything we did about this was very intentional. So the person who did that particular session happened to be my daughter. And one thing we were able to do, I think, quite well with the 8 days was actually bring in other generations. So, you know, we're trying to change the perception that the Hajjah Project is something for mature women, just because some of us are mature. It's actually for all women. So by bringing in our daughters, so we had Carrie for the environmental, we had Sister Darina's daughter, Rania Copeland, who happens to be the CEO of the Black AIDS Foundation. And that was a really powerful piece, because we learned how that organization is advocating for the health of all of us. You know, people think of it as something about sex. It's really about health and wellness for everybody in the community. And we also had, you know, the youth day, when we had some of the youth were as young as about maybe 15 up through college age. And they were the daughters or the daughters of friends, and them telling us what they need. And on that day, we actually pledged that we would start putting some money aside for the youth so that they could create their own project. Some of them mentioned how even though they're in college and they're part of Muslim, you know, college associations, they still don't really know the kids or know or feel that camaraderie. So that's something they can work on while we're all, you know, distant but social. And then we had a day, I call it the sort of Muhammad Bakir Tribe Day, our last day, where Sharon Muhammad, you know, had her daughter by marriage, Kenyatta Bakir, representing Muslim art and Black Lives Matter. And then she had a number of her daughters on and her granddaughter who all participated. And it was just beautiful to see. And I think they finally get it that, you know, we're not just sitting around having these little tea parties and saying we're the Hajjah Project. We're actually, you know, trying to do something and build a legacy, you know, Sadaqah Jariyah for all of us. You know, we want someone to pray for us when we're gone. Some of us may be a little closer to older than others, but, you know, we want to build something that's for the whole community. I also want to say that even though we're the Hajjah Project and we're women centered and collaborative intentionally, that I wanted to demonstrate that women could have good teamship and build things. We are still co-ed. You know, a lot of our advisors are our husbands, you know, the imams in the community, our friends, our relatives. One of my friends who's not Muslim got on 2 of the calls and was really impressed, you know, because I just kind of put the word out. This is for sisters. You know, if you're a sister, then get on. And so she and I are talking, and I hope to collaborate with her on something because we want to do something about, you know, voting awareness in the fall. So it was really beneficial and came out to be something that was greater than what we imagined.
Great. And lastly, I did also want to touch upon the part you were talking about, the trauma piece, Samia. And one of the things that kind of the catchphrase that I guess that I would like, you know, people to reflect upon is that you were referring to when seeing graphic pictures over and over, people asking you about your experiences over and over. You're Black, what has happened to you? That type of thing. Or you're a woman, what has happened to you? Or you're Muslim, what has happened to you? Whatever your, you know, however your identities are, you know, things happen around you and in the world. And one of the things I kind of want to just put out there is the thing that Camila and I talked about was protecting your peace. You are not, you know, you do not have to tell your story. One of the things I always share or suggest is if you see someone, assume something depending on who they are and what has happened, or if you know a little bit about, assume something has happened to them. They don't have to tell you the details. You can just assume, have empathy and compassion. You can do that without knowing the details, personal details. And the reflection also is, if somebody asks you that, you don't have to share. Protect your peace. And in doing that, also, it means that's self-care, doing things that bring you joy, doing things that bring you comfort. Because in this time, you know, we need to find healthy coping activities, you know, that can bring us solace and support. But also, you know, realize that you do not have to provide, you know, details of things and relive things. I've held back from my Facebook. I do not, you know, I was a big avid Facebook person as far as like just, you know, staying up on things and what have you. The news is, you know, was always on in my house, and I had to pull back from that. So create a safety plan for yourself, whatever that is for you. That was part of my safety plan for self-care, is holding back from Facebook, only doing, you know, touching in here and there, touching in, you know, reading this, you know, doing a half hour of news or getting reliable information. I listen to NPR, so, you know, something reliable, but only doing it for a limited amount of time to not overwhelm yourself. I know I'm a very empathic, sensitive person, and I can only take so much. And that's not a weakness. It's nothing. It's honoring who you are, which actually is a strength. And so just remembering that, as well as it doesn't hurt to talk to someone. You may want to talk to someone, you know, who's a professional, or, you know, your peer group, but protecting your, you know, however you choose to do it, but protecting your peace is so vital and important. And I just kind of wanted to put that out there. Is something, you know, I also am a big vicar. People who know me, I'm all about the 99 names. I have it on my phone. I have my, you know,
can you explain to someone who's not familiar with what vicar?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So there are like 99, considered 99 attributes of God. And so sometimes there are other communities that you probably see prayer beads. People can use prayer beads or count on their fingers. But one of the things that can be helpful is, so for me, if for instance, I'm looking for peace. So salam is peace. And so I may, as one of the 99 names of God is as-salam. And so I might just say that repeatedly over and over again. One, because I also believe in mindfulness and grounding oneself. I may do that to ground myself and just kind of breathe as I'm doing it, and do, you know, 100 times or how long it ever takes me to feel relaxed. Also, there's, compassion and mercy. They're different names, compassion and mercy, holy. So whatever kind of appeals to you, whatever name appeals to you, I say utilize that. And you can, research that. It's like a mantra, people have different mantras, but whatever techniques help you to kind of relax and just kind of get grounded in the here and now to the best of your ability. That's something I do. That's a combination of spirituality as well as, spirituality as well as mindful meditation. But, I encourage people to do, what works for them. But that's one of the things that has helped me as far as a way to how I protect my peace, as an example.
Yeah, and that's such an important reminder, especially in this day and age where we are being exposed to an unnatural amount of traumatic information, and our bodies and our minds are only evolved to maybe, handle the trauma of like one saber-toothed tiger or like falling off a cliff, right? We are not equipped right now to be aware of all of the trauma of the entire world simultaneously 24/7. So that's such a great reminder that you've given us to just have that balance and find that peace. So now we'll hear from Sister Shahida Sharif. And if you can talk about what Hajj Pros is, how it came about, and then also just fill us in on what's going on in light of COVID-19 this year and what's happening in Mecca, Saudi Arabia, and what the pilgrimage will look like, if at all.
Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for having me. And I appreciate this conversation. I'm learning so much just listening in. And for me, in working with Hajj Pros, it was something we established maybe almost 20 years ago. We were students studying abroad in Damascus, Syria, my husband and I, and we went on Umrah together. And then the following year, we went on Hajj. And we took, American students. We chartered a bus. We took some of our teachers, and we experienced a lot of challenges. This was after September 11th. And so it was very scarce. There wasn't that many people there. It wasn't as populated, I should say. And particularly, there wasn't as many from America, right? And so being American students studying in the Middle East at that time, traveling by land through borders, going for Hajj, it was very interesting, to say the least. And just to see the dynamics that we experienced there, it led us to, think more about how do American and particularly African-American Muslims experience Hajj when they travel from the US going for Hajj, and, just the culture shock, the language barrier, and, trying to complete your spiritual rites. So you already have those emotional, mental, physical strains occurring at the same time. And then to have those other, challenges on top of that, we were really thinking about how could we facilitate this process and prepare our community and many African-American Muslims from around the country, and to really be able to get the most out of the experience, so they're not overwhelmed or experience anxiety on top of the anxiety that already is there when it comes to such a large undertaking. And so that was something that was an impetus for us beginning Hajj Pros. And so we began in California, where we established ourselves, and we took our first delegation in 2004. And then we continued ever since. And so it was a blessing, just being able to be there, be a support for Muslim women, women from our communities, and just being able to explain the rites, because a lot of times, like when you're moving in the Hajj rites, sometimes you're together with your spouse and sometimes you're by yourself. And so being able to make sure that everything is done in accordance with the practice of Prophet Muhammad, the Sunnah, then it's important just to have that person to be able to support you in that way. And so coming into this year, it was very challenging because there wasn't a lot of information. They kept saying they was going to give us information, and we were waiting for the information for quite some time. and we were trying to, update our people who had intended to make Hajj, but we wanted to make sure we gave them the right information. So alhamdulillah, they did, make a statement recently, and initially they were looking at 20% of the world population coming, but now it's been reduced to primarily those who are within the precincts. So within the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, it'll be primarily those making the Hajj. So it'll be very limited in a sense. So there will be a Hajj. It just will not be attended, from those from other countries. And it makes sense because the numbers are rising. And so that will be a great risk. And it's a huge undertaking just for the Hajj ministry in and of itself to manage just numbers of pilgrims, and just the nature of Hajj and the movement of Hajj, and the interaction and the closeness and the proximity. It can be a lot to mitigate. And so alhamdulillah, I never thought of it being canceled. And I still don't say it's canceled, because there will always be a Hajj, subhanAllah. There's always tawaf. Even if there's no one there, there's some birds making tawaf. So I always say there's a constant movement in the atmosphere, whether it's physically or metaphysically. Hajj is always taking place. We're always in that movement, as Sister Zaria mentioned, that there's always a sacred pilgrimage. And so, just to say that, you mentioned earlier, as far as like women traveling alone or independently, we've had some where it may be a husband and a wife, but the husband may go one year and the wife may go the next year because they have children, right? And so, so in that case, they just, there's a letter that you get notarized, just saying that you're traveling with this group. And then also too, we have Muslim women who are new to Islam, and they may not have a Muslim family. And so they also have that permission to travel because they're a new Muslim. And so, traveling with a group, you have that permission to go. And because you're going within that protection and safety of that group. Then also, if you're a new shahadatain, if you're new to Islam, you can go. Like there's no prohibition. They actually make an exemption for you in that case. And that's for the women who are single. They usually look at the age 45 and under. So if you're age 45 and under, you would just have that letter notarization that you are traveling with this group and that your family is aware that you're going. And that's it's good for the safety and protection, because there is a lot of movement that goes on, during the Hajj rites. And just even when we're there as a group and a collective, we tell our brothers and sisters, don't go anywhere by yourself, and I would say that for any foreign country. Don't just, if you're with a group, or you're with a delegation, or you're with a study abroad, I wouldn't say go out in the streets by yourself at night, and some people, they may, oh, I catch Uber at home, or I do this, I do it. And it's a different mentality when you're in a different country. It's a different language, it's a different culture, and that's not the movement of of where you are. And so as they say, when in Rome, do as Romans. Yeah. I would definitely say, if you're going to go and you go with a group, and I would say be safe minded and stick with that group. So if you have roommates who are other sisters, let's go to the masjid and pray tarawih. Pray qiyamul layl, or pray night prayer, or spend time in the masjid at night reading Quran, or just making tawaf, but go together. So just you're always just safety conscious and think in that way.
Yeah, and that's good to know. That was a really big eye-opener for a lot of women who attended Krishna's khutbah when she gave her khutbah at our jumma'a, in that a lot of women were under the impression that single women were not allowed to travel alone to Saudi Arabia because they have their own sort of restrictions on that. And so it was really helpful to find out that if you are with a travel group, you can actually bypass that rule and still go.
Yeah, and it's I would say that was the case for quite some time. And so you would have to have a mahram, and they still do, like they still in some cases ask for it. So if you have an uncle traveling or imam traveling, but because the nature of the growth of Islam is expanding, there is even a ruling within some schools of thought that a woman traveling with a group, that group becomes her mahram, it becomes her protection. And so just keeping that in mind. So it's not a ruling of Hajj that you can't travel alone. That was more so coming from the ministry, and also too, just just in knowing just the culture of the society, is that the movement is different. Like the women in that country, you see them more now than you did before. So I would say within the past year, with the change of leadership and within the kingdom, you see more women working, in the airports, women driving, women in the stores, like working. So before, they may have been working in offices and different places like that, but you weren't always seeing them. And so there's a lot of expansion and improvements and growth, I would say. But you still want to be conscious of where you are. It's a different environment, it's a different culture, and it's not for us to just come to someone else's culture and say this is how it should be. Like, this is what I do at home, so this is how it should be here. Like, no. it's just doesn't work that way. So.
And is it 1 million or 2 million people who go usually to Hajj every year?
Close to 2 million.
Wow.
And so I'm sure for this year is going to be, really different.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I know even for Umrah, they're going to make it where you do have to apply, for your visa and basically get a number, to be processed in. But they're really doing a lot more mitigation with COVID-19. So for Umrah, will look a little different.
I saw an article that said that actually this is not the first time that they've had to kind of shut down for Hajj. This happened maybe 5 times before in history where there were outbreaks like this in pandemics. So inshallah, it'll resume in the near future. And
also like in the past when they've had like MERS and like SARS, like they did reduce and create restrictions for like other countries.
Yeah, and on that note, talking about those 2 million people that are coming to this one spot on the planet every year, I thought it would be a good idea to read an excerpt from Malcolm X's letter from Hajj. And so for people who aren't familiar with that, when Malcolm X went to Hajj, it really transformed how he saw race relations in America. And after he came back to the US, he actually changed the way he was speaking about race relations and gave a lot more sermons. So I'm going to just read a quick excerpt. Malcolm X's Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, so he changed his name after he came back, letter from Mecca. There were tens of thousands of pilgrims from all over the world. They were of all colors, from blue-eyed blondes to black-skinned Africans, but we were all participating in the same ritual, displaying a spirit of unity and brotherhood that my experiences in America had led me to believe never could exist between the white and non-white. America needs to understand Islam because this is the one religion that erases from its society the race problem. Throughout my travels in the Muslim world, I have met, talked to, and even eaten with people who in America would have been considered white, but the white attitude was removed from their minds by the religion of Islam. I have never before seen sincere and true brotherhood practiced by all colors together, irrespective of their color. I'm gonna skip a little bit. And then he says, during the past 11 days, here in the Muslim world, I have eaten from the same plate, drunk from the same glass, and slept on the same rug while praying to the same God with fellow Muslims whose eyes were the bluest of blue, whose hair was the blondest of blonde, and whose skin was the whitest of white. And in the words and in the deeds of the white Muslims, I felt the same sincerity that I felt among the Black African Muslims of Nigeria, Sudan, and Ghana. We were truly all the same, because their belief in one God had removed the white from their minds, the white from their behavior, and the white from their attitude. I could see from this that perhaps if white Americans could accept the oneness of God, then perhaps too they could accept in reality the oneness of man, or humans, and cease to measure and hinder and harm others in terms of their differences in color. With racism plaguing America like an incurable cancer, the so-called Christian white American heart should be more receptive to a proven solution to such a destructive problem. Perhaps it could be in time to save America from imminent disaster, the same destruction brought upon Germany by racism that eventually destroyed the Germans themselves. So there's a really powerful letter that just shows what that experience was and that how indeed transformational it was. And I just wanted to open up the discussion and see, you know, what your guys' thoughts are on the impact that Hajj can have potentially on race relations, not only within the Muslim community, but beyond. And also how perhaps doing and performing Hajj at an earlier time in your life. I don't have the statistics on me, but there's a very large percentage of Americans who have never even left their home state. And how travel, and especially travel and mingling with everyone else in the world and all these other cultures can impact race relations and how we relate to one another. So anyone who'd like to speak, go ahead.
Well, I can speak to that a little bit, just from my impression. You know, when you go to Hajj, and we got there in the middle of the night, and we hurry up, and I think we put our things down, and we went to the Haram to be there in time for Fajr prayer. And we were on like a second level. So there's the base level where you can see the Kaaba, and then 2 levels above. And so we were in that middle level. And at one point I took a picture, and when I looked at the picture, I said, wow, now, you know, we're here. We're like one of these specks in that picture. And so for me, that kind of resonated, because it's like, okay, we're all here. We're all doing the same prayer. We're doing the same ritual circumambulation of the Kaaba. You know, we're all doing the same thing. So I'm not more important than somebody else, and they're not more important than me. And for me, I had always been seeking, as an African American, when do I get to be a person? Because, you know, having gone through integrated schools and all kinds of experiences, I knew that my white peers and friends, you know, they probably never wake up in the morning and say, oh, darn, today I'm white. What am I going to do? And somebody says something to me about this. Is it because they said it because I'm white, I'm a female, I'm a this, I'm a that? And I think we have a lot of that self-talk. And so for me, just that moment of knowing that I'm part of this much bigger thing was like, okay, now I'm a person. I'm the same. I get my personhood that I've been looking for. So that's one way I reflect on it. I think everyone should have a bigger than you experience. And, you know, Allah, a belief in one God, is a bigger than you experience. For instance, I tell my kids, you know, I don't really care what faith you practice, as long as you believe in God, something bigger than you, and, you know, one God. Because can you hang the moon? Can you hang the sun? Can you keep the planets in alignment?
It's beautiful. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, I was going to say that, you know, just to what she said, it levels the playing field, right? And it's no distinction. And even for men and women, you know, regardless of race, or I should say, in addition to that, you know, everyone has to stand before God, right? Everyone has to stand and bear witness that this is a greater power than all of us, right? And as much as, you know, we may have our you know, interconnectedness just as human beings, and the different things that we experience with one another, whether it's with advanced degrees or, you know, just whatever the case may be that distinguishes us, there's no distinction there, you know. But at the same time, with the men, they're obligated to wear the ihram garment, right? Whereas the women, they're free to wear whatever. And so it's just this, you know, distinction also, that there is a freer movement for the women, and there's something to that, you know, that we don't have to remove that part of us. We don't have that issue per se. It just may show up for us in different ways, right? And so, you know, how we mitigate that, there's this leveling for all of us. Whatever it is that you have to face for yourself, you confront it, and you come face to face with that. So even though you're there with so many people, whatever your issue is, whatever your concern is, whatever your challenge is, it will come to you full frontal. And so I can see him coming from America, having that experience, that would be something that's on the forefront of his mind, right? where it may not be for someone else, because that may just not be the case for them. And so whatever that thing is for us, Allah brings us there to reconcile it and to leave it there, inshallah, so that we can come back better, inshallah.
And Nora, it would be great to hear from you, since you just recently went, and maybe talk about your experiences in terms of seeing that unity and maybe the trials and challenges that you faced as well.
Yeah, I was going to say that when I got back, I went to Hajj 2 years ago. And so when I got back, everyone was asking me what my favorite part is. And everyone has a different experience. Everyone has different stories. But I literally just kept saying my favorite part was that I've never been in a place, like I don't think there's in any other place in the world, where there's millions of people that are all doing the same thing, believing the same thing, like they're for the same spirit, like everyone has the same spirit about them. And it's interesting because you go and I remember at one point my husband Suleiman, we were in Ihram, and so he walked away for a second, and I turned and I couldn't recognize him out of the crowd. And I had like a moment of panic where I was like, oh no, where is he? And then I like stopped and I was like, it's crazy that like my husband, I can't recognize him in this group of people that are right in front of me because they all look the same.
Wow.
And I was like, everyone looks like ants, basically, like running around, all looking exactly the same. But even though we're all having that experience, everyone's feeling like still things are personalized for them. Like everyone comes back, a lot of people come back from Hajj who say that like they had their own personal miracles, or something happened that was so directed towards them. And I always thought, subhanAllah, like Allah has put us in this place that makes us all equal and makes us all look the same and feel the same, but also still gives us our own personal things. Like everything in the world that happens, people think happens for them. And I felt that way at Hajj too, where I was like, I feel like I'm on the same level as all these people, but still I feel like Allah's doing things for me, and that these experiences are happening for me, and that I'm super lucky to be here and to be invited. And so subhanAllah, that's like one of my favorite things. And I think that's also very resonated in Malcolm X's letter, where he's also pointing out that everyone's on the same playing field, and he shared meals and shared rugs and shared everything with all these people of different races, but still like the fact that he's feeling that himself is pointing out that Allah like put him in this place that then made him realize this and had him go through this transformative experience that he was able to bring back to America.
Awesome. Samia, did we have any questions? I see a lot of comments on our Facebook Live page, but I don't know if there were any questions. Do you see any?
I have not seen any specific questions, but lots of comments of appreciation.
Yeah, I mean, I know I feel inspired, inshallah, and maybe not this year, but hopefully soon I can go. And I know Zara, you want to go as well. Samia, have you been for Hajj before? But you used to live in Saudi Arabia, right? Oh, you didn't? Oh, okay.
I lived in Dubai for about 5 years.
Okay.
Because of circumstances and so forth. Unfortunately, we weren't able to go for our Hajj or even Umrah. I've never been to Saudi at all. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I went for Umrah once when I was 10. And, you know, when you're a kid, you aren't really in tune to like, you know, spiritual experiences, or, you know, you're more about fun, right? And I just remember even as a 10-year-old, like I can still feel the presence of, we went at, I think like 3 a.m. because it was less crowded and it was cooler. And just like feeling the coolness radiate from the marble tiles around the Kaaba, and like the blue and or purple and green lights. And you know, as a 10-year-old, I could feel that the spiritual significance. So I can't wait to go, inshallah, as an adult and really have a deeper experience. And I thank all of you for coming together to inspire other people and other Muslimas to take this journey to the 5th pillar of Islam. And inshallah, hopefully do it sooner than later, so that we can then come back and spread that inspiration, as you have so beautifully done, Krishna, after you returned. So thank you all again. Yeah, please go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I just want to give a shout out to like our whole leadership team, if I might.
Yes, please.
You know, besides Zaria that you met, we have Doreen Abdul Samad, who's an artist and an art teacher, who made Hajj, I think, in about 2009, 2010. Ma Shati Salai, who is a former pastor. And she's kind of like the voice of our project in the 8 days. She does some beautiful sort of jazzy dicker. Sharon Muhammad Bakir, who's a lot of people know, who is a nonprofit manager and a board member of Mosques, and an entrepreneur as well. Looking forward to getting some really great maths from her. Camila Williams, who's an attorney, and she is our treasurer. Winona Majid Muhammad, Muhammad Majid, excuse me. And Winona is a chaplain with the Women's Correctional Facility here in Southern California. And so one of our projects is to raise funds to give scarves. We just completed it to the sisters who are incarcerated, because that's what they asked for this year. They've gotten journals and other things, but this year they particularly wanted scarves. And the dawah in that is that, you know, anything that Winona might bring into for the Muslimahs, the other sisters, women in the prisons, they want that as well. So we'll be giving scarves to any sister who wants a scarf there. And, you know, everything about Hajj is the opportunity to be forgiven for your sins. So we pray that one day we can give gifts to sisters who have been incarcerated so they can have that transformative experience of going to Hajj and coming back feeling uplifted and renewed and weights lifted. And let's see, there's me. I think I mentioned me. But anyway, but you know, the quote that kind of, or the thing I was thinking of last night that kind of resonated for me that I wanted to weave in here is that it's important to complete your fifth pillar as you can, but not just to complete the fifth pillar because Allah asks us to. Of course, that's the most important, and we ask and pray to be invited. But you will find what the gift in Hajj is for you when you complete your Hajj. So for me, the gift was, I said, it completed me. I was looking for something, you know, the completion of the fifth pillar actually completed me at a stage in life when I was looking at. So I'm still here, I'm still pushing, you know, I have lots I want to do, but I feel like I left behind a lot of things that were maybe burdening my soul, burdening my mind, so that I could move forward and do this great work, inshallah.
Awesome. So actually, Sister Krishna, if you can close us out with a dua from the heart in English, that would be wonderful. Whatever comes to your spirit.
Oh, and Krishna, could you mention our collective conversation that we have once a week, once a month, the Hajjah Project? Just as if you enjoy this type of fellowship and collective conversation and healing, then, you know, which is kind of what started all of this back in Ramadan, we're offering our sister chat. And if you, before you take us out and dua, I apologize.
And quickly, if you want to learn more about the Hajjah Project, you can go to thehajjahproject.com, and you guys are also
.org.
.org, sorry.
.org,
and you guys also are on Facebook, and I believe Instagram as well. And then if you want to learn more about Hajj Pros, it's hajjpros.com, and you can get more information on those plans as well, inshallah.
Yes,
and do you
have a sisters only Sisters Coffee the fourth Sunday of each month, and it came out of COVID, really. We weren't able to be together, and we just said, well, maybe we can get some people to get on a Zoom call, and it just evolved to it became almost like a little program, et cetera, et cetera. So it's invitation only, just so that we can have the intimacy of a format where people can really chat. And so if you're interested, you know, just ping us in the comments group, or, you know, go to us on Facebook, send us a note or something, and we can invite you. And any member that's part of the Sisters Coffee can invite anybody to the Sisters Coffee. They just need to be women for this. But all right, a dua.
Sorry, I put you on the spot.
Yeah, you go back to prayer, but you know, I'm ready.
Okay, great.
I have to say this about Sister Shahida. She is a very patient person. As I think Allah made me do this as like a wink to her. All during my Hajj, you know, I was fumbling with my scarves. I'm always falling apart or something. Even today, I was like, why did you put on this silk thing that's falling over? You know, I'm a real person. And so I can think of a few times when Sister Shahida was like, Sister Krishna, you know, because it would be hot and I was hot. But at any rate, My dua and my prayer today is that, you know, if Allah calls you to be a Muslim, then step into this deen. Anyone can be fulfilled through acceptance of Islam, the acceptance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the one God here, open and available to all people. You do not have to come perfect. Allah accepts you as you are. You do not have to come with things that you don't understand, feeling like you have to become a Muslim in one day. You flip a switch and you become a Muslim. I'm in proof of that. I don't believe in flipping switches. You come where you are, you start where you are, and you continue to grow and achieve. My prayer is that people realize that Islam is a religion of peace, acceptance of the one God, one Allah. Amen.
Ameen.
All
Ameen.
right. Thank you, everybody. Assalamu alaikum.
Like,
Assalamu alaikum.